They say the biggest shifts in life sneak up on you, not with thunderclaps or fanfares, but in those hushed pockets of time when the world seems to pause just for you. It's been half a year now, but that lazy afternoon clings to me like a shadow I can't shake. The old ceiling fan whirring lazily overhead, casting lazy patterns on the worn hardwood floors, the golden light spilling in through half-drawn blinds like it was painting secrets on the walls. The air felt thick, expectant, as if the whole place was leaning in, waiting for something to break. I figured I had the run of the house to myself. Turns out I was dead wrong. He caught sight of me. Not a fleeting peek, not some casual brush of eyes across a room. No, he took me in, all of me, raw and unguarded. And from that instant, nothing's felt quite right since. I hadn't heard the floorboards sigh under his weight. Just the faint groan of the hinges as the door eased open, then that heavy quiet that swallowed everything else. Our gazes snagged, his startled and searching, mine frozen in place. There was more in that look, though. Something flickering just out of reach. A spark I couldn't pin down then and still can't now. He didn't utter a sound. Neither could I budge. That frozen heartbeat? It's etched into me now, replaying with every inhale, every restless night, every time my lids flutter shut. I've grilled myself on it 1,000 ways. Did I leave that latch undone by accident, or was there a whisper of me hoping for an audience? That doubt terrifies me, because once you've glimpsed your own reflection in someone else's unguarded stare, the old you shatters. You can't glue it back. What came next? Oh, it's burned into my bones. I'll lay it all out for you. But first, if these raw confessions pull at you, hit that subscribe button on Whispered Secrets Revealed. We dive into the hidden currents that reshape us when no one's watching. Michael and I, we started out tangled in something that felt like real fire, or so I believed. Back when we tied the knot, there was this glow between us. Intentional gestures, stolen touches, evenings where his gaze wrapped around me like I was the center of his universe, the only star worth chasing. But bit by bit, that flame guttered out, leaving just wisps of ash. Lately, it's like we're orbiting the same roof, coexisting in the same orbit but worlds apart, more like polite roommates than partners weaving a life. He clocks out late from the office, jets off for work trips that stretch into weeks. Even on the rare nights he's under this roof, his mind's elsewhere, scrolling emails, murmuring into his phone. He'll murmur agreements to my chatter, toss out the expected phrases, but they land flat. Echoes of lines from a play he's lost the script for. Then there's Jordan, Michael's boy from his first marriage, my stepson. He was just 12 when our paths first crossed. I can still picture him, all gangly limbs and solemn quiet, clutching his school bag like a shield against the chaos. His mom had slipped away only months before. Leukemia, the kind that steals breath without mercy. Even as a kid, his eyes carried this depth, like he'd shouldered burdens no one that young should know. Fast forward 5 years. He's 19 now, shot up past his dad's height. His voice settled into a low rumble that commands a room without trying. Still that reserved shell around him, but lately, there's an undercurrent I can't ignore. A subtle shift, like a tide pulling just beneath the surface. He's always been courteous, the kind of kid who clears his plate without being asked. But these days, when we chat over breakfast or pass in the hallway, his gaze hangs a beat too long. It's not bold or leering, nothing you could call out. It's tender, almost mournful, laced with a quiet wonder that leaves me unsettled. And then there was that crisp autumn morning. I'd just thrown on some faded leggings and a simple sweater. Nothing meant to turn heads. I was at the counter, measuring out grounds for the espresso machine, when he wandered in from the mudroom. He paused mid-step, his eyes tracing me for a split second longer than casual, then offered this small, crooked smile as he brushed past. And there it was, a faint trace of my favorite citrus lotion clinging to the air around him. Not on his skin exactly, but close, like he'd lingered near my vanity or the shelf where I keep the diffuser by the stairs. I brushed it off as coincidence. Maybe he'd bumped into the bottle in the bathroom we share. Maybe my imagination was spinning tales again. Had to be. But once a thread like that unravels, you can't help but tug, and suddenly patterns emerge everywhere. The way he'd volunteer to rake leaves in the backyard without prompting. His sleeves rolled up, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked the soil. The way he'd pocket his phone the second I entered the living room, like my presence was a signal to tune out the noise. The way he'd chuckle at my dry quips, even the ones that bombed. His laugh warm and unforced. It wasn't overt seduction. No winks, no loaded compliments. It was gentler, murkier, a fog that blurred the lines without me noticing at first. And I didn't shut it down. Perhaps I should have drawn that boundary sharp and clear. But when you've been fading into the wallpaper for months, years even, and suddenly someone regards you like you're etched in light, alive and irreplaceable, it stirs you. It rouses corners of your soul that have slumbered so deep, you'd swear they were gone for good. Our place is a tomb these days, echoes where laughter used to bounce. Suppers are set for 3, but it's just 2 chairs scraped back most nights. Michael's always tangled in some virtual meeting or buried in spreadsheets, promising he's almost done. So Jordan and I fill the table, picking at plates of roasted chicken or pasta, trading small talk about his community college classes, the indie films he's streaming. The headlines buzzing on our feeds, but woven through the mundane is this pulse, subtle but insistent, like a distant drum you feel in your chest before you hear it. Not hostile, not charged with sparks, just there, a steady undercurrent humming in the spaces between words. Some evenings, conversation peters out, and we linger in the quiet, forks clinking softly against porcelain. Even then, I sense it, his attention on me, not always head-on, sometimes just the corner of his eye flicking my way. And the ache of it? A sliver of me craves that focus. I haven't breathed a word of this to another living soul, but it coils in my ribs, twists low in my gut, hitches my pulse when his shadow falls across the doorway. I lecture myself that it's isolation talking, the slow starvation of touch and desire after so long in the shadows. But then the harder question rises. Why him? Why Jordan? And the answers I circle back to? They're not ones I'd frame for polite company. All I know for certain is this. The afternoon he witnessed me laid bare flipped a switch. It pried open a fissure in my careful world, and no amount of willing it shut has worked. It was a downpour that afternoon, the sort that blankets everything in gray, turning the neighborhood into a blurred watercolor. Sheets of water lashed the gutters, drowning out the usual hum of lawnmowers and distant traffic, wrapping our split-level home in a cocoon of sound. Michael was halfway across the state by then, schmoozing at some industry mixer. I'd lost track of the details weeks ago. He'd breezed out that morning with a distracted wave, his briefcase swinging like an afterthought. No real farewell beyond a mumbled, "Catch you later." I hadn't anticipated company. Jordan typically vanished on rainy weekends, either crashing at a buddy's garage for video game marathons or barricading himself in the basement with his noise-canceling headphones, lost in playlists that drowned the world. So the house wrapped around me in solitude, and I let it. I'd folded the last of the linens, wiped down the granite counters until they gleamed under the pendant lights, uncorked a bottle of Pinot a touch before noon. Then I drifted to the bay window in the breakfast nook, glass in hand, tracing the rivulets racing down the panes like tears on a forgotten face. The void inside wasn't a knife's edge. It was a slow seep, a hollow that had widened over months, years maybe. Something essential eroded away without fanfare. I climbed the stairs on impulse, not chasing any goal, just craving air that wasn't laced with routine. The master suite door whispered shut behind me, or so I thought. There was that satisfying snick of the knob, but perhaps it didn't catch fully. Sloppy on my part, or a subconscious invitation to the emptiness. I sank onto the quilted duvet, knees drawn up, gaze lost in the threads of the area rug. My hands wandered on their own, tracing paths over fabric and skin I'd neglected for too long. No rituals, no dimmed lamps or sultry tracks, just a stripped-down ache, a quiet reclaiming. I closed my eyes and let fragments surface. A gaze that lingered without agenda, palms that mapped without haste, a nearness that felt like homecoming, not obligation. For those stolen minutes, I surrendered, coaxing back the proof that I still pulsed with want, that invisibility hadn't claimed me whole. And then awareness prickled, sharp as a draft. Not fantasy, but flesh and blood. I pivoted slowly, pulse thundering in my temples. And there he stood. Jordan, rooted in the threshold like a statue carved from the storm's shadow. He didn't recoil, didn't avert. And me, I fumbled for the throw blanket, but shock pinned me, movement sluggish as molasses. It stretched eternal, those heartbeats, 5, 10, an eon. His features slack with surprise, but not revulsion. No, there was a depth there, unnamed and magnetic, pulling at threads I didn't know were loose. I bolted upright, blood roaring, tongue leaden, chest of vice, but words died. Unspoken as he pivoted, retreating with measured steps. No dash, no echo of boots on stairs, just the void rushing back like fog off the lake. I remained statue still, palms damp against the sheets, breaths shallow as whispers, brain scrambling to rewrite it as hallucination, a door firmly barred in my mind's eye. But reality bit hard. He'd beheld me, absorbed me, then vanished into the gray. No reckoning, no murmur. Yet I catalogued it all. The rapid tide of his shoulders, the subtle flex of his knuckles as he gripped the frame, the fractional pause before he melted away. That interlude? No mishap. And the hush it birthed roared fiercer than the gale outside. Sleep evaded me that night, a thief in the dark. Lids sealed and his silhouette reformed, poised, probing, piercing. Shame scorched my cheeks, but under it simmered something unnamed, a tendril of thrill coiling forbidden and fierce. Dawn cracked early. I brewed dark roast in the French press, sinking into the banquette with steam curling like questions. I willed normalcy, another drizzly Tuesday, birdsong piercing the clouds, but the fracture mocked me. Did the latch slip or did I court the risk? That riddle nipped at my heels. I clung to accident, a fluke in the rhythm of empty days. Why tamper with locks in a sanctuary? Yet doubt gnawed. I'd skimmed the mechanism, assumed solitude's grace. Avoidance became my armor. Footfalls in the hall? I'd veer to the powder room, feign fascination with the spice rack. Eye contact? A live wire, sparking nausea and thrill in equal measure. Dread pooled. What verdict hid behind his calm? What echo lingered in his quiet? But Jordan, he orbited closer, not fleeing but drawn, perched on a stool as I simmered sauces, querying if I needed a hand with the colander. Tiny incursions, innocuous on paper, but they frayed my edges. And that gaze, softened, yet insistent, mirrored back fragments of me I hadn't authored. Youthful bewilderment, I reasoned. Perhaps the scene blurred in his mind, a puzzle unsolved. Self-deception, though, because midnight found me adrift beside Michael's snoring form, his back a wall of indifference, and my thoughts snared on Jordan. Not merely the tableau, but its aftershocks, the warmth it kindled, illicit and insistent. Visions crept in during slumber, not nightly but relentless, his palm brushing mine in the dim hall, murmurs shattering the hush into confessions too tender for daylight. I'd surface gasping, skin aflame, limbs clenched against the surge, hating the betrayal yet loath to banish it. Awake in the witching hour, beams from the street lamp slicing the blinds, I'd war with remorse and hunger, the scripted days versus phantoms that beckoned without shame. Wardrobe shifted subtly, no fanfare, just silkier hems grazing thighs, a neckline dipping an inch lower, buttons eased on blouses that once buttoned prim. For myself, I swore, the itch to reclaim allure after eclipse. Yet honesty whispered otherwise. The extra minute stirring soup as he patted in sock-footed, the brighter peal of my laughter at his wry asides, the quiet vigil for our orbits to align. I cursed the betrayal of senses, his timbre deepening like aged whiskey, the chisel of his profile under morning light, the gravity he exerted now, filling doorways with unspoken promise. I was the guardian here, the steady anchor, the harbor. But harbors crack, and mine was splintering. Flesh rebelled, thoughts wandered rogue. Nothing transpired, I chanted. No fault, no fracture. Lies, though? The rift yawned, irrevocable, and evasion only amplified its call. This transcended visibility. It was thirst, raw and ravenous, a force I'd starved until it howled. I'd like to claim epiphany struck, a firm pivot to propriety, lines redrawn in steel. But fog claimed those weeks. Terror he'd voice it, terror he wouldn't. The doorway vignette a reel on endless loop. His scrutiny, my gasp, the void, and that nascent, regret-free spark flickering defiant. It bloomed from trifles. He pitched in more, scrubbing pots till they shone, laying out linen napkins with care, dicing onions beside me, the knife's rhythm syncing with my own. But proximity evolved. Elbows grazing as we reached for the herb jar, his frame inches nearer at the island, not brazen, but intimate. I registered his warmth radiating, the hitch in his inhale when fabrics whispered contact. Coincidence? Or choreography unspoken? One twilight, straining for the olive oil on the high shelf, my wrist skimmed his forearm. Electric, that graze. Time suspended, breath synced in stasis. We locked eyes, worlds narrowing to that point of friction. I could have quipped it away, retreated to the fridge's chill. Instead, I held, and he mirrored, his regard shifting. Not boyish, not familial, but ardent, inquisitive, poised on a precipice. Words evaporated. In their wake, a current surged, seismic and silent, rattling my core. Days later, corralling hampers for the wash, I slipped into his room. A quick sweep, habit's ghost. No prying, just gathering teas and jeans from the hamper's mouth. But the leather-bound journal on his nightstand gaped open, pages splayed like an invitation. Curiosity tugged, foolish, fatal, and there, in graphite's whisper, my likeness. Not caricature, not juvenile scribble, elegant lines, shadows pooling in the hollow of my throat, lashes fanned in repose. The angle? Me curled on the porch glider at dusk, book forgotten in my lap, lost to reverie. He'd rendered me not as mentor or maternal echo, but essence, woman unveiled. Nausea rose, sweet and sour. Evening found him home, backpack slung by the hooks. I cornered him in the den, tone measured as a scalpel. What's this? Why me in those pages? No evasion, no flush of guilt. Just vulnerability raw, eyes darting like cornered prey. It wasn't, just practice, he stammered, throat bobbing. Faces around me, you know. But his stance betrayed, knuckles whitening on the door jamb, gaze skittering to the floorboards. He bolted before rebuttal, leaving me clutching the volume, its weight a brand against my palm. Sleepless again, moonlight pooling on the oak planks, pulse a war drum, every nerve alight with unnamed fire. Then, rap at the frame, tentative as a held breath. His. Why rise? To rebuke, to probe, to bask in the proof of his orbit? The panel creaked wide. He hovered, silhouette etched in hall glow, palms jammed in jogger pockets, chin dipped. Forgive me, he breathed, scarce above floorboards. Shouldn't have put you there on paper. Wasn't right. Pause fraught. I leaned in the jam, nightshirt loose on my frame. He lifted his lashes and the words that tumbled. They'll echo eternal. I tried to shake it, but that glimpse, it's carved in me now. Whispered, like confession to a confessor who might damn or absolve. Air thickened. Flight instinct screamed, bolt, shatter the spell. Instead, rooted, I drank him in. The boy who'd bloomed into enigma, seeing through veils I'd forgotten I wore. No advance, no retreat, just stasis, for in that hush, the barrier we'd towed had crumbled to dust. Rain lashed the panes that eve, a relentless tattoo against the slate roof, as if the sky wept for what brewed below. Michael was airborne by then, bound for a coastside summit, details blurred, irrelevant. I'd waved him off with feigned nonchalance, lips brushing his stubble in ritual devoid of heat, door latching like a sentence. Downstairs, the open-plan kitchen glowed under recessed halos, but peace eluded. Tension threaded the air, taut as harp strings. I loomed at the farmhouse sink, palms cradling a ceramic mug of chamomile gone cold, stare adrift in the soapy swirls. Storm's symphony the sole companion. Then, his tread, soft on the slate tiles, heralding approach. I held statue back to the archway, but awareness bloomed. Jordan, presence a magnet. He halted yards off. Quiet reigned, thick as the downpour. I reckon it's time I crash elsewhere, he ventured at last, voice a thread. Gut plummeted, no preamble, just stark truth. I wheeled, meeting his gaze, resolute, wearied, laden with unshed storms. Not fair to linger here. Inches closed unbidden, instinct over reason. Stay, I urged, timbre fracturing. Don't vanish on me. Bewilderment flickered in his eyes, or recognition, terror's twin. We teetered, breaths mingling, tempest outside mirroring the gale within. Impulse seized, fingers grazed his sleeve, light as moth wings. He yielded, folding into embrace, not maternal clasp, but communion, lingering beyond propriety. Frames aligned too seamlessly, my cheek to his collarbone, his heartbeat a frantic Morse under my ear. Recoil whispered, should, must, but inertia won. When at last I eased back, his grip lingered at my hips, mine splayed on his chest, faces a whisper apart in the lamplight's hush. Eyes met, worlds collided, motion ceased, for the chasm we'd skirted had dissolved into ether. Was it lips meeting, feather soft, a sigh shared, or deeper current unspoken vow? Details blur in mercy's haze, not shielding us, but because language falters at such thresholds. What lingers? Vitality, electric and absolute. In that breath, externals evaporated, vows, judgments, the chorus of shoulds from a world blind to our orbit. Just fervor, stillness, no postlude words, necessity absent. He withdrew to shadows, and I remained, sentinel in gloom, veins humming, dermis alive, thoughts a whirlwind unchained. A line breached, tangible now, irrevocable. Dawn brought brittle quiet. Not the old hush, but crystalline, laced with peril, a pain begging shatter. Jordan and I wove avoidance into routine. No shared counters, no plate-past pleasantries. The accord was tacit. We'd traversed forbidden terrain, maps redrawn in irreversible ink. He ghosted meals, footsteps fading to his attic airy, latch clicking like verdict. I, a specter haunting my domain, motions languid as underwater drift, uncertain if ascent or descent claimed me. Emails piled unread. Scones charred, I